Hi, I'm Nathan Thornberry, and I'm the founder of RWS Insurance Services, LLC, as well as the CEO of Residential Warranty Services Incorporated. And I'm here today to talk to you about professional liability in home inspection. And for those of you in the home inspection business, you know this already, but you got to ask yourself the question, how did home inspectors become the real estate industry's punching bags? Well, that's a long story, but it starts with the real estate purchase agreement and the contingency therein. Now, there's a little bit of history to this, how we became more and more of the target, and it starts with this guy here, Bob Pearson. He's a friend, he's a mentor, he's a legend in this space because he invented professional liability insurance for home inspectors. And, later on he added a rider for referring agent protection because if there's a property condition issue and a real estate agent referred you, as is often the case with a home inspection, then they're going to get wrapped into the thing as well. And he negotiated with insurers for policies in various formats, and they had never existed before. He wrote the policies that almost everybody in the insurance business and home inspection, E&O, and general liability still use to this day. He also sold enough policies, it's worth noting, to make it nearly consistent. He did have some shifts from one insurer to another, but had a pretty good long run with each of them. And, as far as I'm concerned, he might very well be the reason that the inspection industry didn't die off by 1990. I mean, you look at all of these real estate associations, the National Association of Realtors chapters, their local organizations, they all adopted inspection contingencies in their residential real estate purchase agreements. And if that was a contingency designed to put the broker outside the liability of home inspection, it was, here it is for the buyer. You're going to sign whether you have an inspection contingency or not. You're going to sign how long it is. And, this is now a part of the deal. It's customary and typical. At that point, it was known that home inspectors, largely at the time, were not of great wealth. They were not somebody that you could go after the assets of if they messed up. And so this guy solved that issue, and he solved it very quickly and really changed the trajectory of the home inspection business, I would argue, for the better. Now, he continued on with Allen Insurance. They are still around, of course, but they had a program for home inspectors, and that continued for decades and continued fairly consistently. Decent rates, good underwriting standards, all of this was maintained, and then there was a shift in the market. And here comes some competition, and it starts to get fierce. You have Inspector Pro entering the market. I'll name them by name. They are the company that came in with a consistent and consistently lower price than the other guys, whoever it might be. Now, this started a cascading effect in the home inspection E&O space that I'm not sure everybody was aware of. We'll get to that. But insurance plans became a game of hot potato in the home inspection industry. The group plans, there were several group plans out there. They started to fall apart because they were, the option for somebody that had a claim or two, and they were pretty good price. But when this Inspector Pro plan came out and some of those guys started to get past, 3 years since their last claim, well, the lower risk participants, they left those group plans. And by the way, Allen Insurance got a little bit more competitive on their rates too. So it was like a double whammy. Those plans are largely gone at this point. Then you had, on a good note, an expansion of the number of inspection companies that were insured, but you also had the number of insurance plans being offered increase. So it kind of, net didn't do that much, but it kept the total premiums per plan in what I would call a tenuous position. Okay, so a lot of these insurers that back these plans, they have stated minimums for plans that someone else is going to administer, and it's a third-party administration scenario in most of these cases. So if they're not doing 5 million in premiums or 7 million or 10 million in premiums, there isn't an insurer that really wants to touch this. It's a pain in the butt and almost doesn't pay for the administrative costs just in going back and forth with that administrator if you're $1 million or $2 million plan. And just as a policy, these insurance companies are giant. They have programs that are 10 million plus. Usually some have minimums that are higher than that. So in the home inspection industry, there just wasn't enough space. We had too many plans come into play, and now we have some of the insurers that have bowed out as a result, and we're going to see more of that happening. Then we had something interesting happen. Inspector Pro came into the industry with a rate that in some cases was half off of what Allen Insurance and what some of the other players at the time were offering. And then they had claims experiences, and they had claims experiences from the general population of inspectors that led them to having to increase their rates over the last 5 years. So, you had this, not exodus, I wouldn't call it, because, Allen Insurance was still in the game until last year, and you still have Elite MGA there in the game. They're now partnered with Internachi, and, those guys are still around, but now Inspector Pro, after beating them up on low rates, has had that claims experience and has had to increase them. So now inspectors are paying more and more year after year. In 2020, a real massive shift happened. All of this other stuff just kind of made for having to change your insurance policy every once in a while. But now there's kind of a massive shift happening. You have Nick Ermico and Nathan Thornberry independently, not communicating about it, not partnering in any way on this, just on their own, independently start their own owned plans with the main intent, at least for me, and I believe for Nick as well, of creating stability. So we don't have this shift. Because you might be sitting there going, well, I was insured with Allen, and then I moved over to Inspector Pro, and no big deal. They're switching me over to their new insurer, and that's maybe fine with you. You might be one person who's going to play along with that, just play the best move on the chessboard. If you're Nick or I, you have thousands of clients, and whenever there's a shift, you get a lot of calls. And now we see these rates going up, and it's like, okay, what you stated to come in and do, Inspector Pro, you're now no longer doing. It's not that your rates are high or that I consider them unreasonable or that you don't do a great job. It's just, it changed. And so between that and some participants bowing out, I think Nick and I both saw the writing on the wall. And in the meantime, if you're an inspector in the back of this E&O insurance airplane, you think everything in the cockpit is honky-dory, and it really looks more like this, and you're relaxed like this when you should probably be more like this. And in my view, there should have been a little bit more of this as we go over the last 5 years particularly, and rates increasing, and see, in my estimation, around $81 million in just the last 5 years alone of overbillings for E&O insurance. And I say overbillings because they're being utilized largely for settlements and legal fees and legal battles that don't make a lot of sense. And I'll go over that here in this video. So in 2020, we launched RWS Insurance Services, LLC. We're already projected in 2021 to save our inspector clients around $1.5 million over the plans that they had. That doesn't include the increases that they were scheduled to have at time of renewal. So we're probably closer to $2 million. But that was founded in 2020, hundreds of applications in the first month. Full licensure in 20 plus states we launched with, and now we are fully compliant in everywhere but Washington and California and New York. And by the time you watch this video, we'll probably have Washington and California done. New York is probably 3 to 5 months out. So let's say that that's going to happen by September of 2021. But that'll be the last one, and then we're throughout the U.S. Our average savings, now that we've had the experience of quoting, billing, binding policies, our average savings are saving our clients over other industry plans just over 30%, and our highest discount was nearly 80%. The pricing and plans are better for most all. We've only had one occurrence where somebody took me up on the guarantee we have on our website, which states this: if you get a better quote than what we quote you, we're going to hand you $100. It doesn't matter if it's $1 better. We're going to hand you $100. And we've only had to do that once. And, it happens. So for whatever reason, that inspector scenario with their insurer was a little bit cheaper. And it wasn't a lot cheaper, but it was cheaper, and we weren't going to save them money, so we didn't accept the business. We also sent them the $100. The largest discounts proportionally tend to be among multi-inspector firms. That wasn't intentional. It was just the byproduct of how we price it. We have our best price plan is $1,000 base plus $200 per inspector. Well, the more inspectors you have, the less the average inspector is going to cost, since it's just the $200 per inspector. And so that should make sense to most. But even on these single man operations, which is the vast majority of inspectors and the vast majority of our clients, we're generally seeing them in the $1,800 to $2,200 range, all in for a pretty basic plan of E&O and general liability, with anywhere from $100,000 to $1 million in coverage, and we're delivering $3 million worth of coverage at $1,200 a year. So it's still a difference. It's just not 80% like it has been with some of our multi-inspector firms. So now let's talk about the claims and customer and inspector experience so far, because when we started this, we made some big claims. And we made some big claims on I say claims. We made some big statements. Maybe we shouldn't use the word claims for that in this context. But we made some big statements about how we were going to handle claims, what the results would be, since our insureds universally offer a warranty package with their inspections. And to date, many months in, and I'll come back and do an update at the year mark, but to date, we have assessed $0 in deductibles or hard cost, to any of our inspector clients. $0. And it doesn't mean we didn't pay on a claim. It just means we didn't assess any deductibles. And it's worth noting at this point that we don't care about claims history. We don't care if you have a claim. We're not going to cancel you or increase your rates. The number of claims you get as a home inspector is simply coincidental. It's not necessarily something that you can control, other than to have a responsible business that offers warranty coverage for the things that break that people expect to be fixed. If you're doing that, then you're going to have less claims, but everything else doesn't change anything. It's just the chance that you ran into a guy that wants to sue you today. So we're not going to penalize anyone for that. But to date, 100% of the demand letters that we've received have been responded to, and we've been able to do that in the positive and have it accepted by all the parties. So in other words, someone sends us a demand letter and it might say, hey, we want $20,000. And we say, well, that's great, but let's talk about your real issue, how it applies to the coverages already in place. Here's a check for your client, and everybody's happy. And that's been the solution in 100% of cases so far today. There's a diminishment of cost in both policy premiums and deductibles that for the inspector, if you're buying this policy, you have a diminishment in the cost of operating your business. And since we haven't charged any deductibles, and we take very seriously standing behind what we do here, that has done an even better job than all of our other things. The warranty dealer scenario, alarm leads or concierge programs, all of these things that contribute to making our service packages either very cheap or free. This is another one, and this has netted us an additional 100 companies where where they're no longer paying for our services. They're in a net financial gain in a positive way for on just the account. So that's really exciting to us because it's part of our goal. If we can deliver an amazing product, give you a wonderful marketing edge, cover your clients in a very real way, and contribute to a better client experience, and do it in a way where you're adding value to your inspection and probably charging more than the next guy that offers very little with his inspection, but also to do it at low or no cost. That's just the utopian version of what we would like to accomplish, and we're getting a lot closer because of this RWS Insurance Services policy. We will be revisiting our deductible policies, which is the one thing. If I have one thing that inspectors don't love about the policy, they love the discount, but they don't love the $10,000 deductible. And we haven't had to charge one, so after we have a full year of a full cycle of a substantial number of policies, and that means over a year from the start of many of them, then we'll revisit that. And it's our intention at this point to reduce that deductible in some substantial way. Now, I want to bring up one thing because it keeps getting asked to me. I have inspectors ask me, "Do you have preclaims?" Well, let's talk about that for a second. And I promise not to keep this slide up very long. I know it's an offensive slide, but it's just a gesture. It's a gesture or a word of negative connotation, and which is worse, that or delivering a horrible customer service experience? And there are so many that do that, and they do it utilizing this preclaims. The expectation in real estate is that you are the responsible party. The agent isn't good at looking at mechanical and structural stuff, and it's not their part of this. You were named on the contingency, whether you like it or not. And it was your look at the property, your opinion on its condition, that led a buyer to responding to the seller and having that inspection negotiation, as we call it. And so if you mess that up, or the client moves in and they have a problem, it's their mindset, and it is a mindset that somebody's responsible, and there's nobody better than you. So just accept that. Don't try to, educate people into not being Americans. You're not going to get over that. It's just going to be. But, this is built into every real residential real property purchase agreement and the real estate process in America. You buy a house, you get a home inspection, you move in, and if you have a problem, it's either covered by your home warranty or it's your inspector's problem. And the sooner you accept that and just move forward, the better. The notion that preclaims, this invented thing from some of the insurers where they say, we offer to tell people off even sooner. The notion that would do anything other than damage your company's reputation is absurd. The notion that it would stave off anything more than a solid complaint handling process is a farce. And I want to get to a revised process here, because in home inspection E&O, there has been a great deal of confusion on one topic. And you could go into a room of home inspectors, of 100 of them, and call on 10 random people and say, what is a claim notification event for your E&O policy? And you'd get 10 different answers, and they'd probably get more and more conservative along the way until you got to the point that you would think you have to tell your E&O insurer about every little complaint. It's simply not true. It's not true by their policy. It's something that's been misinterpreted. It's been stated by agents to inspectors. It's been used, I think, wrongly to try to deny claims before. So let's define that claim a little bit differently, and we're going to do that in this presentation. We're going to have cooperative intervention, and we've already been doing it with our clients where, they know there's a client issue, and they simply talk to us and say, all right, what do I need to do about this one? Because it seems like it's getting a little hot. Great. Let's intervene now. Let's figure out what we can turn into a warranty claim. Let's figure out what we need to do for that client to mitigate damages and, at least reduce the severity of the issue early on. Another thing that's hugely revised in our process is that we have the complete records and a centralized process. For many of our clients, we have their administrative software with Next Inspect, or we have access to their ISN because they're on our call center. So we have access to the report to begin with. Then we have all of their warranty claims. We have a technical support system where they can go and essentially make a complaint, we'll call it, to an inspector. And we have all of that chronological and organized so that, when an issue hits us, we have all the facts. And we have more facts than the E&O insurers, could possibly get their hands on without going to an incredible extent. And by the way, they don't even know it's there. So this is a big change. Another thing is a credible and authoritative and positive response to attorney demand letters. Our goal with every demand letter is to figure out, okay, what can we do for the client? And we're doing it from the position of being the insurer and also being representative of the warranty process as well. So we can say, look, here's a solution, and we're familiar with all the solutions. By the way, it was us that your clients called when they called us last Thursday and said X. This creates a different level of communication with the lawyer. It's not just a templated, here's a part of a contract that we're going to talk about today. Involving you, the insured, the inspector, in communications and in minimizing damages. We keep you involved from start to finish. And then there's a key feature that we love to do. This is our goal, and we do it. We've always been doing it. We've been doing it for years, but now we can do it in a different way and more often, and that's to divert the liability to residential warranty services. A great number of E&O claims that are made are on property condition issues where the property condition issue might have been fine on the day of inspection. We don't know, but it might have changed. And if it changed, then it falls under warranty coverage most of the time. And in that case, we want to divert that liability over to residential warranty services. We want the lawyer, the client, whoever it is that's bringing up the issue, to forget the inspection company's name. Like they do not need to any longer communicate with you. Let them have a problem with the warranty. Let them have a problem with the coverage levels if they do. But as long as they don't have a problem with you, which, by the way, is one of the many ways in which a quote claim with an E&O provider, a typical one, with us becomes a no deductible event. So let's go into an example, and I say confidential. I'm not really putting out any confidential information here, but here's this from a lawyer. An incorrectly installed water heater issue, completely missed. All right, and it's wonderful to see these lawyers take a great interest in the home inspection industry. I can only imagine that this lawyer knew nothing about home inspection 5 days before meeting this client, and now is citing the ASHI standards of practice. and she's attaching a copy as if we don't know it or have a copy ourselves. Thanks, Carol. We didn't need that. But here's this checklist that includes the visible piping. Okay, all right. Here's the thing. This water heater had maybe one little code issue, and maybe one that an inspector would call most of the time or some of the time, but certainly not something that they're required by that ASHI standards of practice to call every time. And even if that were the case, this issue had already been addressed when the client called because the water heater had a problem and they made a claim, and we had already paid for the water heater repair, which included correcting this issue. Now, this is just one example of something that you should be considering when it comes to E&O. Okay, how many times does an E&O claim get made, and the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. They aren't aware of how involved in the complaint process we are as a warranty company. So they just move ahead with, oh, here's a response where we tell you that the ASHI Standards of Practice says specifically that we're not required to call out any code issues. So let's just have an argument back and forth and burn through many hours of lawyer work arguing this issue when it's already been resolved. Now, there were 14 issues in the letter. I'm not going to go through all of them. Here's the second one. Regarding mold, she says that the report indicates there's evidence of past water entry at the lower level of home, and now they're complaining about visible mold in that area. It should be noted, by the way, that this inspection included a line right next to this issue, right next to it, where it said no mold testing was done. It's recommended that you get a mold test here. And they refused to do it. They did not get that service. And yet the inspector noted the past water entry and they suggested mold testing. But here we are coming back to say, you're responsible, Mr. Home Inspector. Now, even if the inspector was responsible, it didn't matter because this inspection included our mold safe coverage, and this client had already called in, had already made a claim, and we had already paid to fix this issue. This attorney is either aware of that and willing to, go after unjust enrichment, which is, a major no-no legally, or they just have no idea what questions to ask, or they did ask the question and they were lied to. Whatever the result, if this had been with another E&O company, if this had gone off to an insurer that doesn't understand these issues the way that we do and doesn't have the record sitting right in front of them showing that payment was made, then they might have settled this issue, especially with as many issues as they brought up. And again, I'm not going to bring all of them here, but here's 8, 9, and 10. This is a response to their original letter of 14 items. But, they're saying that this section is informational only this time, but the first time when they were talking about these cracks in the garage foundation that are, nothing untypical of this age of home, and nothing that is, severe, nothing that requires action. The first time they sent it, it was not with the words, this is informational only. It only became informational only when we came back, not as a typical E&O insurer, but as a home warranty company with 33 years and 500,000 claims worth of experience, explaining exactly the technical details here and why the allegation doesn't make sense. Number 9, this was regarding just some little gaps around some old windows, and again, nothing that was actionable. And here it's like, okay, well, she admits these gaps may be typical after we came back with some technical data, a technical response. Never do we focus on the terms and conditions of the agreement. Never do we go to the standards and say, hey, the standards say we don't have to inspect anything. No. Let's talk about the technical issues. And so we did that. And now they're coming back saying, well, this really isn't an issue, but and it's typical, but it shows how incompetent you are. Oh, okay. All right. Have your words, but that's not going anywhere. And then number 10. This is one of my favorite ones. Upon moving into the property, my client's microwave would not turn on. There was no documentation that the microwave was functional in the inspection report. Well, the inspection report includes defects, and we don't have to list everything that's functional. But even if it wasn't inspected, as you assume, you should ask your client about the check they received for the repair of the microwave when they called in a warranty claim. This is all stuff that we do. This is how we operate. And so these lawyer letters, it just makes sense for them to come to us so we can go, all right, has this already been processed as a warranty claim or not? If it hasn't been, then let's make it one. And if it has been, then let's figure out why they don't understand where we're at. And bottom line, if this lawyer wanted to go and take the $20,000 that they were asking for at the bottom of their letter and say, we're going to file a lawsuit anyway, then we're going to have to go to court on it. And that's what insurers are generally trying to avoid. You know, they're trying to avoid spending legal dollars because E&O doesn't cover much. It basically covers lawyers arguing with lawyers. So what do we do in that case? Well, I know what we intend to do. So far, so good. By the way, our technical support system, which is something that you get as a client of ours, and if you're a top member, we actually do all of the responding for you if you'd like. This is an integrated system where we can handle claims, complaints, all of these things for you. The Elite Group in Southern California, they're a very large company. I mean, we're talking about a company that will likely do 25 or 30,000 home inspections this year. Since implementing our technical support and all of the systems behind what we do, they've had 0 E&O claims or lawsuits. Dead 0. Statistically, on 25,000 occurrences, they should have had 10 or 12, but they had 0. And why? Because we have all of that client data, and when somebody has an issue, they type it in. They upload their seller's disclosure. They upload pictures of the issue, whatever it might be. And immediately we're presented with all of the different services that they have, a link to any complaints they might have made, a link to any claims they might have made, a link to their inspection PDF, and a link to any of their insurance claims so we can, make sure to be on the same page. By the way, if you utilize that program and you yourself want to send out a release, that's another thing that home inspectors do, and they do it in any way. Well, we gave it a process. So you can go right into our technical support system, click send release, it'll start a DocuSign contract, and then it will format a template email for you, and all you have to do is fill in the number of the inspection fees. That's it. And then our system will do that. It will send you confirmation. It'll send you a copy of the signed release, and it'll keep it on file with us in case they were to ever make any claims in the future. Now, here are the two paths, and this is what's really important to you as you look at E&O companies and E&O policies and general liability and say, how would I like my clients to be treated? The typical E&O or pre-claims approach, which really is no different. It's just we want to tell the client off sooner or we tell them off later. That's basically the distinction. The first thing they do is they demand notification from you earlier than appropriate. They advise the inspector to be adversarial. They advise inspectors to be defensive. I've heard E&O companies tell inspectors not to say, I'm sorry for what you're experiencing. This is frustrating. I've heard them tell inspectors never to admit fault, even when they're clearly at fault, which is ludicrous. Then their second step is to deny liability, to respond to the client without any regard for the actual cost to doing that, which is the inspector's ongoing business and referrals. When you tell the client who has a real problem, here's what you're not going to get today. Well, you just sent a bill to the inspector in the form of future losses. Then at some point, either at the point of a demand letter, when they file a lawsuit, or some arbitrary determination that the E&O insurer makes that, this is now a liability that they want to be handling, then they start a claim. And now you, the inspector, are responsible to pay your deductible. Then they go on burning billable attorney hours on arguing agreement terms like the limits of liability, the scope, citing standards, and how those standards mean that you're not responsible to inspect anything. And then when that doesn't work, if someone is continuing to push forward and they have something that's legitimate, they have a legitimate property condition issue, and it might have been something that was noticeable to you as an inspector. They're going to settle for an amount that they determine as more beneficial than the continued representation that is the only thing they cover. And then they're going to bill additional money to you, the insured, over the long term. With RWS Insurance, the only required notification is when you feel the issue deems it appropriate, or our systems indicate that there's a big problem, so we get a self-notification, or there's a demand letter or lawsuit filed. Anything else you submit to us and say, hey, can you advise? Can you help me on this? What can we do with this one? Anything else is not considered a claim. It's considered a friendly conversation until it's a real claim, until we have real expenses. Then we determine the property condition issues with real mechanical and structural knowledge, not just knowledge of a contract. We address them with that knowledge base. We go direct to the client utilizing our existing business relationship, and we help them through the issue. That's what we do. And that's what we do that works so well in reducing liability that we can charge 30 to 80% less for E&O than any other company in the marketplace. Then we utilize staff to get a correct diagnosis and competitive prices for whatever the indemnity is to be offered. Then we enforce the claims process. Then we divert the targeting of the inspection company to the warranty company, wherever it's practical, wherever we can justify that there's a warranty claim, we divert them to us. We make it our problem. Because your reputation is very important. Ours is too, and we have the best reputation in the business, in our industry. But we're used to dealing with complaints, and we have millions and millions of clients. So dealing with 1 or 2 this week, or 10 or 12 this week, that are a little over the top, that's something that we can handle. You don't need to worry about it. If we can turn it into a warranty claim and shine the light on us for their attention, then great. In that process, we create a legally defensible position so strong that a suit, when filed, can be met with an immediate counterclaim in many cases. Here's the issue. And for those of you that don't carry E&O insurance, I totally understand. You might feel that you're being conservative financially. But there are 1 million lawyers in America. More alarmingly, there are 40 million civil suits filed annually. Now, many of those are, evictions and little collections from health systems and that sort of thing. But there are a lot of civil suits, and there are a lot of lawyers ready to make a buck going after you. So let's talk about eliminating liability in home inspection, because it's a reality. We've done it now. We've been in this business for long enough that statistically, if we were any other E&O provider, we would have charged many deductibles to multiple clients. But we've charged 0. So here's your first step to eliminating liability. Be responsive and have a process and product that removes the possibility of legitimate damages being claimed. And what I mean by that is if a client moves in and they have a problem, if they have a defect, structural or mechanical, if you have coverage in place for that, then they don't have a basis for damages against you. Avoid attorney time and effort in making these flimsy excuses and, talking about how we don't really inspect anything, or any discussion of inspection agreement terms, which are not very enforceable. If anybody tells you otherwise, they simply don't know what they're talking about. And focus on solutions and elimination of damages throughout the process. In other words, let's fix the problem for the client. Whatever we need to do, wherever we need to go. If we have to make a trip out there, if we need to call in a favor with a local contractor, if we need to help supervise that and involve you, then let's do that. We can have a better client experience and a better outcome. Exceed expectations, cover every possible issue, offer as many services as possible. And here I'm going to get into really things that are good for your business overall from a profit perspective, but also they're good from a liability perspective. You should be offering sewer camera inspections. You should be offering mold testing, asbestos testing, lead testing, water sampling. Everything that you can put on an inspection menu is an opportunity for a client to pay you to get an actual result. If it's not there, then they didn't have that opportunity. Therefore, it's a more gray area. It becomes way more black and white. If they said, yes, I have an opportunity to have that test done, but I did not pay for it. This is a illustration of an inspection company versus their competition. And their competition looks like a crappy little fast food burger, and their burger is just piled high. It's a double stacked cheeseburger with big colorful toppings. And this is what your inspection should look like. You should be offering same-day reports. You should be offering 24/7 customer service. You should get into things like thermal imaging. You should take your inspection to that next level. That is an important tenet of liability reduction. And that's all. You'll notice I'm saying it before warranty coverage, because it's really more important. It's more important that you have one-stop shopping, that you offer all the services, that you have those same-day reports, that customer service, advanced techniques and tools like thermal imaging, and an online order and scheduler, so that you can get a lot of business, so that you can experience a lot more and deliver for clients and be financially able to write a check when it's your turn, when it's a good business decision. The other stuff is flashier. It makes more marketing sense to put a warranty at the top of the list, but it also serves a great purpose when it comes to resolving issues for your clients. This guy, Nick Gromyko, has said many times famously, if I were an inspector, I'd be offering recall check and warranty packages. And of course, he'd offer his own buyback guarantee, but he's a good promoter. Reality is that a good percentage, 3 to 4% of your clients, are going to have some sort of issue covered by a warranty at some point, or at least an issue where they come to us for a customer service need. And if you're delivering more, not less, you're going to be more competitive whatever this year brings, whatever next year brings. And we're up 20% in 2020 on real estate transactions over our kind of normal course of business. At some point, that draws back and we go down a little bit, and maybe we go down below normal and there's a correction. When that happens, you want to be more efficient, you want to be more profitable, you want to be the leader in your market in every single way, and you can do it for free because your E&O insurance can be drastically reduced, while the fees for services like our warranty packages and recall check are very minimal. So I hope you enjoyed this today and understand a little bit more than you did before about home inspection, E&O, and general liability. If you have a question for me, Nathan Thornberry, you can email me, nathan@nathan.tv.